the Marshall Islands, freak waves smashed down the doors of an army's barracks.
Water entered the building, flooding the entire place. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Olago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. Senate manifesto condemns ongoing People's Initiative. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. considers the ICC's jurisdiction in the Philippines as a sovereignty threat. 21 Israeli soldiers dead in the Gaza Strip in the deadliest attack on IDF since the war began. A magnitude 7 earthquake shakes the China-Kyrgyzstan border. And the NBA is undergoing a major resurgence as scoring is going up higher than ever.
Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Nevada,
España,
Paris, France,
United Kingdom,
Washington, D.C.,
London Bureau, Papua New Guinea, in New York,
Washington, D.C.
Mata ng Agila, Mata ng Agila,
Mata ng Agila International.
Trusted, connected, on point.
The Senate on Tuesday formally released a manifesto expressing their strong opposition to the ongoing People's Initiative. The said initiative seeks to amend the 1987 Constitution by allowing all members of Congress to jointly vote on proposed constitutional amendments in a constituent assembly. The Senate described such moves as a brazen attempt to violate the Constitution, the country, and the people. Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri read the manifesto after the senators conducted a caucus on charter change. The manifesto pointed out that the goal of the People's Initiative was to revise the Constitution by eliminating the Senate from the equation. The Senate expressed concern that if this People's Initiative prospers, further changes to the Constitution can be done with or without the Senate's approval and even absent all the senators. Meanwhile, COMELEC spokesperson attorney John Rex Laudianco says it is only the Supreme Court which can prevent the Commission on Elections from accepting the signatures collected for the People's Initiative. But he says this can only reach the Supreme Court if there is a justifiable issue. But for President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., he said his administration will let the COMELEC do their job to validate the signatures. He also said that the COMELEC should rescind the collected signatures if the signatories received payment in exchange for signing the People's Initiative.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. on Tuesday said that he considers the International Criminal Court, or ICC, as a threat to Philippine sovereignty. Marcos maintained that he does not recognize the ICC's jurisdiction over the country, saying although its delegates are welcome in the Philippines, his government will not help in any investigation. He said the government would strictly monitor their actions, particularly if they intend to talk to agencies. Marcos also instructed any agency of the government not to answer any calls from the ICC. The chief executive's remarks come after Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa's call that Malacanang should clarify that it allowed ICC investigators to enter the Philippines.
The Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP, is intensifying efforts to bolster its external defense capabilities this year in response to the recent aggressive actions by the China Coast Guard, or CCG, against Filipino fishermen at Scarborough Shoal. Manila strongly condemned the latest actions of the CCG, urging Beijing to uphold its commitment to de-escalate tensions in the West Philippine Sea. According to the Philippine Coast Guard, or PCG, members of the CCG disembarked from their rubber boats, targeting Filipino fishermen in the area and pressuring them to return the seashells they had gathered. Collaborative efforts between the AFP and the PCG are underway as the armed forces seek to enhance support for Coast Guard operations in addressing and preventing such harassments.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has issued Executive Order number 54, a strategic overhaul of the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency, or NICA, to effectively address threats to national security, particularly from cybersecurity risks. The restructuring involves the establishment of the Office of the Deputy Director General for Cyber and Emerging Threats within NICA. This office will play a pivotal role in directing the planning, supervision, and coordination efforts of the agency. The Deputy Director General's primary focus will be on counterintelligence and countermeasures against cybersecurity threats, weapons of mass destruction, and other emerging risks. To ensure comprehensive coverage, the office will be equipped with other directors specializing in counterintelligence and security, as well as cyber intelligence and countering weapons of mass destruction.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has announced a significant initiative to establish 179 additional medical specialty centers before the conclusion of his term.
I cannot forget my father's advice to me, and he said the first service that government must provide to its people is healthcare. And because no matter how successful a society is, no matter how wealthy a person is, that wealth and that success they cannot enjoy if they're not enjoying a good health.
President Marcos highlighted the government's commitment to enhancing healthcare infrastructure during the launch of the country's inaugural human lung transplant at the Lung Center of the Philippines and the National Kidney and Transplant Institute. The Marcos administration has successfully set up 131 operational specialty centers nationwide, including 9 lung specialty centers strategically positioned to bring vital lung care services closer to Filipinos, particularly in rural areas. The government is actively conducting training programs for doctors through the Doctors to Barrios program. Meanwhile, the Commission on Higher Education and the Department of Health are also implementing an expanded nursing education program.
The Social Weather Stations, or SWS, has revealed a December 2023 report showing that 12.6% of Filipino families said that they experience involuntary hunger at least once in the past 3 months. The annual hunger rate for 2023 now stands at 10.7% after this recent survey. While this is slightly lower than the 11.7% average recorded in 2022, the 2023 figure is still 1.4 points higher than the pre-pandemic average of 9.3% in 2019. Breaking down the December 2023 figures, the 12.6% hunger rate consists of 11.2% experiencing moderate hunger and 1.4% facing severe hunger. Moderate hunger pertains to those who experienced hunger only once or a few times in the last 3 months, while severe hunger applies to those who faced it often or always during the same period.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. called for unity to ensure the success of the government's fight against hunger, poverty, and injustice. Marcos made the call in a speech delivered at the commemoration of the 125th anniversary of the First Philippine Republic. He said that his administration has been waging war against hunger and vowed that his government would continue to generate better jobs for Filipinos to provide equal treatment to all. He underscored his administration's commitment to securing water and energy supply. The president added that the government continues to build better and more hospitals and schools for the public.
The Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD's social pension program, indigent senior citizens beneficiaries will receive 1,000 pesos monthly allowance starting this February 2024. Assistant Secretary Romel Lopez said the increase is part of the Republic Act 11916, or the act increasing the social pension of indigent senior citizens. Lopez noted that the funds for the implementation of the social pension hike were included in the agency's 2024 budget. The RA 11916 increases the monthly stipend of indigent senior citizens by 100% from 500 pesos up to 1,000 pesos. This enables them to cope with the increasing inflation. Okay, so what do you think about, this rise in the incentives for indigent senior citizens?
I think it's absolutely necessary and couldn't come at a better time.
Yes.
because a lot of our senior citizens can't really depend on their children because they belong in poor families. So
Yes.
it's much needed.
And we're always talking about inflation, how prices come to rise. So senior citizens, a lot of them are actually not working anymore, but they still need to exercise their independence. And more so when you're a senior, you also need to ensure that you have the funds for medical bills.
Exactly.
That's something that I'm sure that they've experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic, the importance of that.
And maintenance medicines are
Oh, yes.
already like a regular thing for our senior citizens. You know, medicines for diabetes, for hypertension, those are part of their daily maintenance.
I hope that's something in the future the government can also implement is financial literacy
Oh,
for these
definitely.
senior citizens because, you know, this 1,000 pesos may seem like a good amount of money at the time, but they also have to learn how to save it, how to make sure to invest it in what is important in their lives.
And I feel that they deserve more.
Oh,
and hopefully
yes.
in the near future, the government can do something about, ranking that up.
I hope senior citizens also get the confidence that just because they're senior citizens doesn't mean that they can't contribute to society. You know, we also turn to them for wisdom, for their knowledge.
right.
So I hope that they can also use this incentive, as I mentioned, for their independence to exercise their abilities.
And we must never forget that they were once hardworking people too.
Oh yes, they should definitely be recognized. Now this is what's coming up. 7 ASEAN nations take part in the first solidarity exercises in Natuna waters. Venezuela authorities arrest 32 individuals involved in the alleged plot to assassinate President Nicolas Maduro. And an Indian tech CEO falls to his death during the company's grand party entrance. Stay tuned for more stories around the globe when we return.
Hello mga ka-Net 25, bon dia! Abangan nyo naman ako dito sa Lutong Dasan. Abangan nyo ang minuto namin ng Bagnet with KBL. Meron din tayo sweet and sour fish na sure ako magugustuhan yan. And ito pa, sambal kangkong at grilled chicken pineapple inasal sa Lutong Dasan. Sabado po, 11 a.m. dito lang sa Net 25.
Let's get together, Sunday 25. Sunday 25.
Ngayong linggo sa Sine Throwback.
Tay? Bakit hindi niya may itim? Ano yung nakatapo sa patok mo? Wak! Tay! O sige ha, pupunta na ako ron. Bye-bye.
Ngayong linggo, alas 12 ng tanghali. Dito lang sa Net 25.
Let's get together, Sunday 25. Sunday 25.
Welcome back to Matarang Agila International. 7 countries took part in the first ASEAN solidarity exercises in Natuna waters near the South China Sea. Non-combat military drills involve naval warships and aircraft from Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei. The joint patrol exercises aim to boost military ties and enhance interoperability among ASEAN nations. The drills also involve search and rescue operations, as well as humanitarian and disaster relief coordination. However, some experts read the joint naval drills as a signal to China's growing assertiveness in the Asia-Pacific region.
NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg warns that China is coming closer to NATO in terms of military and technological capabilities. He asserts that NATO should address China's systematic challenge. RT correspondent Donald Carter reports.
China's heavy investments in modern military capabilities, including more and more advanced nuclear weapons. China's way of behavior, especially in the South China Sea, and the way China is actually violating core principles for NATO, democracy, the rule of law. And we also have to understand that this is not about NATO moving into Asia, but it's about the fact that China is coming closer to us. Of course, NATO has to address what happens in Asia, not because we are a global security alliance, but because what happens there matters for us, and vice versa.
As the North Atlantic Treaty Organization continues to expand its reach into the Far East, Brussels seems a bit overly concerned about some apparently aggressive Chinese behavior in the South China Sea. It's a bit strange because NATO has troops stationed in Taiwan, which is, let's not forget, a part of China itself. Makes you wonder who's the real threat here, especially when Beijing's the one calling to refrain from military activities and an end to the finger-pointing from NATO's American overlords.
We urge the US to stop misleading international public opinion with false narratives, to strictly control and restrain frontline military activities, and refrain from any provocative actions.
More recently, a Chinese delegation to Washington again called on the U.S. to stop provoking Beijing around Taiwan. The whole situation bears a stark resemblance to the way Russia's military operation in Ukraine went down. According to the West, Russia was the aggressor from the beginning, no matter how many NATO countries were propped up on its border over the years.
President Putin went to war against Ukraine with a declared aim to get less NATO. He's getting the exact opposite. He's getting more NATO presence in the eastern part of the alliance, and he's getting 2 new members with Finland and Sweden.
No mention of NATO's broken promise not to expand past its 1991 borders or its steady military buildup over the years.
The NATO military bloc has increased its overall activity dramatically of late. Considerable forces and resources from the United States have been redeployed to our borders, including aircraft. The number of NATO troops in Eastern and Central Europe has increased. Let me remind you of what we all know. In 1991, they promised Gorbachev, no, not an inch to the east. Well, here we are. This is the kind of partners they are. They shamelessly lie through their teeth. At the same time, the bloc is no longer hiding its aggressive nature behind defensive rhetoric. I was told years ago it was not a military bloc but a political organization. And last time I checked, Article 5 was still in place. At the same time, as I said, the aggressive nature of the bloc is not being hidden. U.S. policy doctrines explicitly spell out its claims to global supremacy.
With continual NATO expansion in the Far East and no sign of the West giving up on Taiwan separatism, calling China an aggressor looks like another classic case of the West gaslighting everyone who doesn't agree with them.
Writer E. Jean Carroll's civil defamation case against former United States President Donald Trump has been postponed after one of the jurors was sent home sick. U.S. District Judge Louis Kaplan said that one of the 9 jurors reported feeling nauseous and hot. Alina Habba, one of the lead lawyers of Trump, also said she was not feeling well and had a fever within the last 48 hours. Judge Kaplan announced that the trial would resume on Wednesday morning. He said he would decide later whether to let Trump testify at the next hearing. Trump has consistently denied Carroll's allegations of sexual harassment, insisting that he never knew or saw Carroll before.
Congressman Barry Loudermilk claims more than 100 encrypted files related to the investigation of the January 6th Capitol riot mysteriously vanished just days before the GOP took over the House majority. Loudermilk, the current chairman of the House Administration Committee's Oversight Subcommittee, says a forensics team discovered that files believed to contain interviews and depositions pertinent to the case were either deleted or encrypted on January 1 of last year. He said that his team already recovered 100 deleted and encrypted files, but he demanded the Democrats to be transparent and hand over the passwords. Republicans secured the majority of the House after the 2022 midterm elections. Media reports say Republicans have been working to uncover security failures and other breaches that happened during the January 6 investigation. The head of a non-governmental organization says violence in Russia is increasing in every part of life in the country. Olga Sadovskaya of Crew Against Torture attributes the rise to the general situation in the country as it continues its war in Ukraine. Thomas I. Likeness reports.
Sadovskaya says that violence of all types is on the increase in Russia. She says domestic violence has dramatically risen, as well as brutality at the hands of authorities.
We see the increase of violence in the prison institutions. We see not the increase of violence in numbers, but the increase of violence in terms of severity when people are arrested and beaten. And we see that the state agents have become more brutal.
She says violence is not an island. It does not exist in isolation. Sadovskaya says it can start in a neighboring country or on the battlefield.
When it's burned somewhere, it spreads outside the place of birth, and it spreads outside where it was created, and it affects all the society, unfortunately.
Sadovskaya is a lawyer by trade. Her organization, Crew Against Torture, has been around for 24 years now. She says they work with different kinds of cases that are connected to torture, to state violence, torture in psychiatric institutions, by police and in prisons. Sadovskaya says sometimes it even happens in schools and kindergartens. She says her group investigates because the government tends to do nothing.
Because the situation in Russia looks like this. When the person complains that he was or she was subjected to torture, usually the state refuses to investigate the case. They usually say that nothing happened, we haven't found any witnesses, we don't know what it was, but it wasn't torture. And what we do is we investigate the allegation instead of the state.
Sadovskaya's comments come ahead of a UN Committee on Children's Rights, which will grill Moscow on its treatment of Ukrainian children believed to have been sent to Russia by force. Thomas I. Likeness from Agila International.
Venezuelan authorities have arrested 32 civilians and soldiers after a months-long investigation into their alleged part in a U.S.-backed conspiracy to assassinate President Nicolas Maduro. The prosecutor's office says all suspects have confessed and revealed information about the plans. Rose Papaangelis has the details.
Venezuela's Attorney General Tarek William Saab told a news conference in Caracas the suspects had been accused of treason and convicted for their crimes. Saab says arrest warrants have been issued for 11 other people. They include rights activists, journalists, and soldiers in exile. The alleged plot also targeted Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino. Padrino told the same press conference that they kept the investigation that started last year secret because it coincided with talks between Maduro and the United States. Those talks resulted in a prisoner swap. He blames the plot on the far right. Rose Papaangelis from Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The United States and the United Kingdom have launched a second series of joint airstrikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. This collaborative effort targeted 8 sites, including an underground storage facility and Houthi missile and surveillance capabilities. The operation received support from other nations, including Australia, Bahrain, Canada, and the Netherlands. In a joint statement issued by both the U.S. and the UK, the airstrikes were emphasized to be a measure safeguarding the free flow of commerce, reiterating that the primary objective is to de-escalate the conflict and restore stability in the Red Sea region.
Look, if the Houthis cease the attacks, we can certainly reconsider this designation. If they don't, as the president said, we will not hesitate to take further actions to protect our people and the free flow of international.
21 soldiers were killed in the Gaza Strip in the deadliest attack on Israel's forces since the beginning of the war.
לפי הידוע לנו בשלב זה, סביב השעה 4, ככל הנראה נורה טיל RPG על ידי מחבלים לעבר טנק שהבטיח את הכוח. ובמקביל לכך אירע פיצוץ של 2 מבנים דו-קומתיים. המבנים קרסו כתוצאה מהפיצוץ הזה, בשעה שמרבית הכוח נמצא בתוכם ובסמוך אליהם. המבנים ככל הנראה התפוצצו כתוצאה ממוקשים שכוחותינו הטמינו בהם והיו לקראת תהליך של פיצוץ המבנים ותשתיות הטרור במרחב.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expresses resolve to continue the offensive until Israel eliminates the ruling Hamas militant group and secures the release of over 100 hostages held captive in Gaza. Meanwhile, a growing division among Israelis regarding the feasibility of these goals, as significant Israeli casualties have prompted calls to reconsider military operations. A senior Egyptian official revealed that Israel proposed a 2-month ceasefire, suggesting the release of hostages in exchange for Palestinians imprisoned by Israel. Hamas, however, rejected the proposal, insisting on the release of hostages only after Israel ceases its offensive and withdraws from Gaza.
You know, it's really difficult to discuss war because it's something we're not really going through. So it's hard to understand either side. But I think when we think about it, a side that we do understand are the civilians, the innocent lives that are being taken away because of what's happening in these countries.
And you're right, while we do not know everything, I think it's safe to... I think both of us agree, and a lot of people agree with us, in that it gets in the way of humanitarian aid being sent to Palestinians who are right now needing food and other supplies.
Not only that, bordering countries are also destabilizing. I feel like everybody is on guard. So these people who are trying to flee, if they try to cross to different countries, everybody is on guard. So they don't have a place to run to. They don't have a place to escape. And when you witness, I guess, on social media, just the videos of everybody, what they're going through, the lack of supplies, or people not even, losing their lives from these attacks, but losing their lives because they're starting to lose resources, that gets very difficult. And I think that's what we really have to think about when we're talking about a ceasefire.
And it's quite unfortunate that the United Nations Security Council had been trying to call for a ceasefire, but unfortunately it has to be a global movement, a collective effort. And even though a lot of countries signed up for the ceasefire, it did not push through because it is a non-binding agreement.
Yes.
It's sad.
I think a lot of countries are starting to take sides as well.
For their own security,
of course. But they just have to, I think, regroup and figure out how to call for a ceasefire, something that is agreeable to everybody.
It's quite sad that this is not the decision of one person.
Yes.
No one person or no one country actually has the upper hand in this.
And us as members of the media, it's also sad that this is what we're reporting for at the beginning of 2024. The first attack was in the beginning of October. So it's been months that this has been ongoing. How much longer will it still be happening? In other news, Sony ends its planned $10 billion merger with Z Entertainment. The deal announced 2 years ago was set to form more than 75 television channels, film assets, and 2 streaming platforms. Sony says it issued a notice terminating the merger, saying that closing conditions were not satisfied. Sources familiar with the issue say closing the deal has been problematic since Sony did not want Goenka to run the combined entity. Sony had also become concerned about slumping profits at Z since 2021. Z Entertainment says it could take legal action against Sony.
Videos of the Vistex company CEO Sanjay Shah have been circulating on social media, showing his fatal fall during his grand entrance together with Vistex President Vishwanath Raju, who was also left severely injured by the accident. The company party held at the famous Ramoji Film City in Hyderabad, India, was intended to be a celebration of Vistex Asia's Silver Jubilee. This quickly turned into a grim display when an onstage mishap caused the two heads of the Illinois-based company to fall 15 feet into the ground. Vistex company CEO Sanjay Shah and President Raju were being held by an iron cage for their grand entrance when the pair suddenly fell as the chain supporting the vessel snapped. Shah's death was pronounced at the hospital, while Datla is reported to have sustained severe injuries and remains in critical condition. Authorities are now investigating the company's complaint over the lack of safety measures in the venue. Vistex was founded by Shah in 1999 and has now grown to be a multinational software company with 20 offices around the globe. Some of their most prominent clients include Yamaha, General Motors, and Coca-Cola. Up next, a Michigan officer enlists a dog to rescue her owner. A magnitude 7 earthquake hits the China-Kyrgyzstan border. And Huawei makes its move to abandon Android. Please don't go away. We've got more stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Mag-asawang senior citizen na may anak na kailangan ng pang-dialysis, nagpa-responde.
Ng programa ng Responde at tumugon kaagad. Katunayan, narito po nga kayo. Kaya po ako nagpapasalamat ng napakarami sa inyo.
Viral ngayon, dalawang matanda na nagtitinda ng basahan sa C6. Ating respondihan. Expose. Dahilan ng sunod-sunod na aksidente sa kalsada, ating inimbestigahan. Sabado, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi, ito ang Responde, Mata ng Mamamayan.
Let's get together. Sunday 25. Sunday 25.
May kayamanan sa goodwill. Gusto niyo bang mahukay ang katotohanan?
Pagpalalampasin ang kapanapanabik ng mga pangyayari sa barkadang minahal nyo na.
Ang Goodwill Season 3.
Tuwing 4 p.m. every Sunday.
Dito lang sa Net 25.
Goodwill Season 3, tuwing 4 p.m. dito sa Net 25.
Let's get together. Sunday 25. Sunday 25.
A Michigan State police officer has enlisted a man's dog for his rescue. A 65-year-old man had fallen in the icy lake of Arbutus while walking his dog, Ruby. Bystanders who saw the incident immediately contacted 911. Police officer Cameron Bennett rushed to the scene. Bennett called Ruby the dog and attached the rescue disc to her collar. Then the owner called his dog back. An assisting firefighter came to help to pull the man to safety. The rescued man was sent to a medical center for treatment.
Iraq has held a state funeral for 41 Yazidis killed by the Islamic State group in 2014. Authorities recently identified the victims through DNA tests. Jeff Sanidad has more details.
After seizing swaths of Iraq in 2014, Islamic State jihadists carried out massacres. The attacks included the northern region of Sinjar, home to the Kurdish-speaking Yazidi minority. Jihadists killed thousands of men and forced women into sexual slavery. Scores of mass graves were discovered across the country after Iraqi forces defeated the jihadists in 2017. That set off a long and painstaking process of identifying the bodies. In Baghdad, portraits of the victims and their coffins, covered with the Iraqi flag and flower wreaths, were paraded on army pickup trucks at the Iraqi capital's iconic Martyrs Monument. Family members and Yazidi officials attended the ceremony. The United Nations says more than 200 mass graves left behind by the jihadists are still being exhumed and could contain up to 12,000 bodies. More than 2,700 Yazidis are believed to be still missing. Jeff Sanidad for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Farmers in the UK are hoping their latest protest will scare politicians into taking action. Ralph Cornell has more.
Fruit and vegetable growers set up dozens of scarecrows outside Britain's parliament in their protests against what they say is unfair treatment by the country's 6 largest supermarket chains. The 49 scarecrows represent the 49% of farmers who say they are on the brink of leaving the industry. Protest organizer Guy Singh Watson says supermarkets are bringing British farming to its knees. Singh Watson's vegetable delivery company circulated a petition that has received 112,000 signatures. It says government policies have failed to provide adequate support for farmers and were rarely enforced. The farmers want the supermarkets to adhere to fair purchasing agreements. They include buying agreed upon quantities and paying the agreed amount on time without exception. They say unfair purchasing agreements by the big chains will drive many of them out of business in the next 12 months. Ralph Cornell from Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Cameroon launches the first malaria vaccination program to be offered nationwide. The World Health Organization calls the move historic. David Oria reports.
According to the WHO, malaria kills more than 600,000 people a year, mainly in Africa. Most of the deaths from the mosquito-borne disease are children under 5 years old. They account for more than 80% of deaths on the continent. Following a pilot phase, the vaccine is being rolled out across Africa, starting in Cameroon. The government says the jab will be offered free of charge. It will be given to all children under 6 months old at the same time as other required or recommended vaccinations. David Oria from Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
2 sets of 3 to 4 foot waves have smashed down doors of Army barracks in the Marshall Islands. The freak waves sent military personnel and furniture flying. Witnesses said one person was injured and is in stable condition, while non-mission personnel were evacuated. The U.S. Army announced that a series of weather-induced waves hitting the Roy Namur resulted to significant flooding in the northern portions of the island. Authorities said that the flooding also hit 2 airports at Ailing Laplap Atoll.
A 7.0 magnitude earthquake has struck along the China-Kyrgyzstan border, injuring at least 6 people.
Уважаемые жители города Бишкек и Кыргызской республики, в 0 часов 9 минут произошло землетрясение на территории Китайской Народной Республики в районе 7 баллов. Особо сильные толчки ощущались в Джетогузском, Аксайском и Тюбском районах. В Бишкеке ощущалось в пределах 4-5 баллов.
The quake was registered just after 2 a.m. at a depth of 13 kilometers in China's Xinjiang region. Authorities quickly deployed 200 rescuers to the quake's epicenter, while some 800 people were on standby for any large disaster relief mission. Local reports said more than 120 homes have been damaged and some agricultural structures also collapsed. The quake downed power lines, but electricity was quickly restored. State broadcaster CCTV said several aftershocks were felt, including ones measuring from 4 to 5 magnitudes. Tremors were felt in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan.
На данный момент зафиксировано уже более 10 авторшоков. Из них наши жители ощутили только 2 авторшока. Сейсмические события идут на угасание. Никаких поводов для паники нет.
In Almaty City, people left their homes to seek safety in the street after the quake caused walls to shake and furniture to shift. Authorities said that as of now, there were no casualties, but extensive damage is probable.
What do you think about it? Yeah, go ahead.
We just reported about an earthquake of some 5-point-something magnitude yesterday in the same region in China.
That's what I was going to say. When we think about it, you know, news headlines about natural disasters and harsh weather really dominated the media in 2023, and it still continues this year. But also, natural disasters are inevitable phenomena. They're natural phenomena.
Right.
But the damage that is caused is because of human activity. And that is what we have to discuss, because that's what we have control over.
The sooner we can come to terms with the fact, the sooner we can do something about it and take action. Climate change is here now, and we have to more than make up for it. We should have done something years and years ago when it was first tackled. And people have been lax. I think it's a lack of, discipline among people. Like we said earlier in other topics, it's collective effort. And it requires every individual to have that discipline in terms of waste management even. And overpopulation is a major contributing factor as to why these things are happening. Ice melting, global warming are what are bringing about climate change.
There are so many things. Congestion, use of fossil fuels instead of renewable energy. But I actually want to go back to a video I saw today of Chris Martin of Coldplay. I'm still on that Coldplay, He actually said that for years, a lot of us have been waiting for our government or other people to take action on these issues, on these natural disasters. But we have to realize at some point that we also have the control to change the situation. Yes, personal actions cannot overtake government policies. However, small actions can initiate that change, reducing water waste, food waste, as I mentioned, using more renewable energy, or even using our voice more in our platform to talk about how climate change is happening, and we have to do something about it now.
And as an individual, I do in my own little way, I try to contribute to things, this world becoming a better place. But people kind of question that, and they find it funny and meaningless. So it's sad.
So we need to continue to spread the word on that.
Yes, we do.
China's regulator has removed its draft video game rules from its website. The initiative was previously proposed in December 2023 and aimed at curbing spending and rewards that enticed playing video games. This was a move described by gaming companies that boosted their shares. Chinese firm Tencent Holdings and NetEase reported an increase of shares as much as 4% and 7% respectively. Sources said that the link to the draft rules on China's National Press and Publication Administration's website was inaccessible as of January 23, 2024. The regulator previously set a deadline on the consultation period in the rules, which will end on January 22. Analysts said that removal of the draft rules was unusual. The NPPA has yet to give its comments on the reason for the removal of the proposed measure.
Huawei has made its move to totally abandon Android OS with its new in-house developed operating system, the Harmony OS Next. The Chinese tech giant announced that it plans to roll out a developer version of the platform in the second quarter this year. Meanwhile, the full commercial version of the operating system will be available by the fourth quarter of 2024. Huawei previously launched its proprietary Harmony system in 2019. The United States, however, imposed restrictions aimed at cutting Harmony systems access to Google technical support. This made the newer version of the Harmony OS not compatible with Android. A beta test was also open for the company to acquire testers to experience the key features.
Coming right up, a lonely giraffe is on its way to his new happy home in Mexico. Joel Embiid and Karl Anthony Towns drop high scores the NBA has not seen on the same day in more than 45 years. And Japan Film Festival will kickstart with free admission in February. Catch the latest in sports and entertainment. Mata ng Agila International will return with more global news.
Kwentuhang makaka-relate kay you.
Menopause. Meron ka bang nararamdaman ng mga signs ng menopause?
Menopause really happens. In my case, I had a condition called endometriosis.
Miss Corina, ganda po ng hair nyo. Ano pong shampoo nyo?
Mapa-senior man kay you.
My apos are here. They're here with me and they give me such joy. And so, kung hindi ako magtatrabaho, how could I spoil them?
O Gen Z?
Nar is actually an accent from Australia. So like when you say no, you don't say no. They say nar.
Bida kayo dito.
Sumay!
Let's just always choose to be kind.
Kaya ugaliin ang tumutok kung saan masaya at maganda ang simula ng araw. 10 a.m. to 12, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, kada umaga.
Let's get together. Sunday 25. Sunday 25.
A lonely giraffe living in harsh conditions in northern Mexico is heading to a safari park to begin a new life after a campaign by animal rights activists. The male giraffe named Benito began the roughly 2,000-kilometer journey on Sunday from Ciudad Juarez near the Mexican-U.S. border to African safari in the central state of Puebla. EJ Gonzalez tells us more.
According to Africam Safari Management, Benito the giraffe will live with other giraffes in conditions more similar to his. Benito is making the road trip in a special trailer accompanied by a team of experts. The trip is expected to take about 50 hours. The move follows a campaign by conservationists who criticize the unsuitable living conditions in Ciudad Juarez, where the giraffe is at the mercy of extreme temperatures. In mid-January, a judge ordered that Benito be sent to Puebla. It said that Benito had been living alone in a trash-strewn enclosure lacking grass, shade, and appropriate shelter in a region that experiences extreme weather conditions. EJ Gonzalez from Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Andrei Rublev spoiled the party late night when he hit back-to-back come-from-behind sets to take out Australian #1 Alex de Minaur in a dramatic 5-set thriller inside a tense Rod Laver Arena. Vin Pasqua has the score.
Alex de Minaur looked on track to move into his first Australian Open quarter-final when he won the third-set tie-break, but Andrei Rublev stayed calm enough to finish a 5-set victory after 4 hours and 14 minutes. Down 2-1, the world number 5 didn't panic, breaking early in the 4th and 5th sets to quiet the crowd and wrestle back the momentum. Even though Rublev appeared to be fading physically over the closing stages, there was no stopping him, ripping 42 winners by the time the two shook hands. Once he recovered, the 26-year-old's next task will be to beat in-form Italian and 4th seed Yannick Sinner when they square off in the last 8. Rublev will face 4th seed Sinner in the quarterfinals after the Italian beat 15 seed Karen Khachanov in straight sets.
The NBA is undergoing a major resurgence as scoring is going up higher than ever. On this day, on the 18th anniversary of Kobe Bryant's 81-point game, Joel Embiid and Karl Anthony Towns put on a pair of dazzling historic scoring shows of their own with a pair of career-high franchise record efforts. Vin Pasqua returns with this report.
Embiid, coast to coast for 70!
Joel Embiid and Karl Anthony Towns are two of the best big men in the league, in a league that prides themselves as the best in the world. And tonight, of all nights, they proved everyone right, dropping big numbers on dominant performances in any spot in the court. The process put on a performance for the ages as he scored a franchise record 70 points, the most in the NBA this season, to lead the Philadelphia 76ers to a 133-123 victory over Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs. He was 24 of 41 from the field, including 1 of 2 from three-point range, and made 21 of 23 free throws. Embiid also set a career high with 18 rebounds. He broke Hall of Famer Wilt Chamberlain's 76ers record of 68 points. While on the other end, Karl Anthony Towns scored a franchise record 62 points, including 44 in the first half. But the Charlotte Hornets erased an 18-point deficit and stunned the Minnesota Timberwolves 128-125. Towns managed just 4 points on 2 for 10 shooting in the fourth quarter when the Timberwolves were outscored 36-18. He thought he was fouled on a drive to the basket in the closing seconds, and Minnesota trailing by 1, then was short on a three-point attempt on the final possession. Miles Bridges scored 28 points and Brandon Miller had 27 for the Hornets. Leaky Black ripped the ball away from Towns on his way to the basket to preserve the Hornets' 10th victory of the season. Joel Embiid scored 70 in Philadelphia. Karl Anthony Towns had 62 in Minnesota. The elite big men paired up to do something the NBA hadn't seen on the same day in more than 45 years. Reporting for sports, Vin Pasqua for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Embiid, coast to coast!
A New Mexico grand jury has cited a new charge of involuntary manslaughter against actor Alec Baldwin in connection with a tragic movie set shooting in October 2021. This incident occurred during the rehearsal for a scene in the film Rust, where Baldwin was practicing firing a Colt .45 pistol, subsequently discharging the gun, fatally striking cinematographer Helena Hutchins and injuring director Joel Souza. Baldwin maintains his innocence, asserting that he did not pull the trigger and merely drew back the hammer of the pistol.
I take the gun out in the rehearsal. He wanted very dramatic and very sudden kind of sneak up on them. I take the gun out. And as it clears, as the barrel clears, I turn and cock the gun over here. I turn and cock the gun goes off. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be a cold gun.
He also argues that he cannot be held responsible for Hutchins' death as he was unaware that the weapon contained live rounds, emphasizing that live ammunition was not supposed to be present on the set. Earlier charges against the actor were dropped in April of the previous year, just before the scheduled start of a criminal trial. However, local prosecutors have since presented additional details from forensic tests on the firearm involved in the shooting. Despite Baldwin's repeated denial of pulling the trigger, the emerging information from tests suggests that the trigger had to be pulled or sufficiently depressed to release the fully cocked or retracted hammer of the revolver in question.
Great news for fans of Japanese cinema. The Japan Film Festival, or the JFF, will kickstart next month, and admission is free. Stephanie Mayo for Matanang Agila International Scoop.
The Japan Film Festival is back. Formerly known as Egaisai, the Japanese Film Festival, or the JFF, is back on its 26th year. The JFF will start rolling into Philippine theaters starting February 1st. In Metro Manila, the festival will happen at the Shangri-La Red Carpet Cinema until February 11th. Meanwhile, in Cebu, Baguio, Iloilo, and Davao, the JFF will have different festival dates, which will begin mid-February and end in early March. The JFF will also have a special run at the UPFI Film Center in the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Launched in 1997, the festival has grown to become one of the most highly anticipated film festivals in the Philippines, attracting over 25,000 audiences yearly. Presented by the Japan Foundation, this year's festival theme is nostalgia and will feature 14 contemporary Japanese films with various genres, from drama to anime to romance, mystery, and more. The good news is that admission is free. Festival Director and Deputy Director of the Japan Foundation Manila, Mr. Tanaka Yojiro, hopes that the JFF will become a platform for cinema lovers to come back to theaters.
In the film festival?
Yes, this time we have 14 films for free in Manila, Cebu, Davao, Iloilo, and Baguio. So please come and watch.
This year's opening film is the 2022 The First Slam Dunk, an animated sports film based on the hit 1990s anime franchise Slam Dunk. The festival will close with Voltus 5 The Liberation, the climactic conclusion of Voltus 5, a compilation of the last 5 episodes of Voltus 5 re-edited for a theatrical experience.
During the pandemic, many people say that the movie-going culture has changed to have more people watching the films at home. But we have a very strong belief that there's always something you can only enjoy in cinema. So I hope that this JFF will be the platform for many people to come back to the theaters and remember the joy they used to have in cinema.
Stephanie Mayo for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Closest to us is the University of the Philippines Film Center.
Okay, let's go.
And for our Tuesday night takeaway, here's our quote from American speaker and author Earl Nightingale. All you need is the plan, the roadmap, and the courage to press on to your destination.
I think the most important one there is definitely the courage, because sometimes we do have a plan, we have a roadmap of how to get there, but it's the courage that holds us back.
And I would say that's easier said than done.
Oh, yes.
But we try every single day while we can.
And we also can't undermine our courage.
Exactly.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point. Thank you for choosing Matanang Agila International as your trusted news source, keeping you connected to the world and on point with stories from around the globe. Follow, like, and subscribe to @Net25 TV.